Hello? Will people try to take a seat? We need to start. We have a hard stop at the end of this. So if people can find their seats so we can get started with the program. Si se pueden sentar, por favor, ya vamos a comenzar con el programa. If people can take a seat. So there's more seats over there on that side. Hay más sillas allá de aquel lado.
We're live.
Okay, so then I guess we're ready. Estamos listos. My name is Richard Monge. I'm the assistant manager of the Chicago Midwest Regional Joint Board. Just want to welcome you all to our historic building here, built and financed by the workers of Hart Chapter Marx, who had a strike back in 1910 and 11, won and built a union, and the rest is history in terms of the part of the middle class. It was a special dues increase that built this building, where there's been historical fights, struggles led out of this office, and I'd like to welcome you. Margarito, did you translate that? A los compañeros de la Unión, bienvenidos como siempre, y si necesitan algo nomás nos avisan, y gracias por salir esta noche muy difícil con mucha nieve y todo. Representa una disciplina, una organización, y me gusta. So with that, I'll turn it over to Jill Stein, who's running the program.
Thank you all so much. Thank you, Richard. And a big thank you to Workers United for making this incredible, beautiful space for us. This physical space and this political space that this union is carving out to ensure that we have a place for people, planet, and peace over profit as we go forward into the future. So I just want to give a big thank you to Workers United. So we're really excited that you're here, and we've just come off of 2 days of bringing people together from across the country and from across many movements to come together, because it's a time to come together. We are being translated into Spanish as a sign that we are coming together. So we'll be speaking slowly so that we can be sure that the translation has time to go through. So we're really grateful that you're here with us today to help really launch this new mode of organizing that brings us together. So to start us off, I'm going to ask Sherry Mitchell to say a few words. Sherry Mitchell, do you want to introduce yourselves, or shall I give you a brief introduction? All right, I'll take it. So Sherry is a leader in the Penobscot Nation. She's also an attorney and a leader in the fight for indigenous rights, for the protection of sacred sites, for the protection of air, land, and water. And she is an example of how the indigenous people in this country and around the world really are the first line of defense for the planet and the people, and now are the last line of defense. And it's a tradition for events to begin with our connection, our deep connection to place and to planet and to heart. So I'm going to welcome Sherry Mitchell to kick off the convergence for people, planet, and peace over profit. Thank you.
Wuliwan, Nitangak, Ndaliwisi, Wanahamugasit, Wanawapskek Najeo, and Didilabama Gawasus and Nagakakus. My name is Sherry Mitchell. I'm very honored to be here with you. I'm from the Penobscot Nation. My clans are Bear and Crow. And it's an honor for me to be here and to talk to you about this very important work that we're all a part of. And to share a little bit with you about how I come to this work. And I think it's really important for us to understand that this isn't just about fighting for... I'm gonna start right now speaking more slowly, because I listen to what Jill says. When people ask me, who are you and where do you come from, I can answer with one word, Penobscot. And so I grew up in a small reservation in central Maine, and our tribe owns all of the islands in the Penobscot River. And so Penobscot is the place where the white rocks come out of the water. It's a series of whitewater rapids, but also white rocks that sit on the eastern side of the reservation where I grew up in the Penobscot River. And so when I say Ejibelida Hadum, Penobscot, you know, that I am proud to be Penobscot, to be Penobscot. When I talk about who I am, where I come from, in that one word, I'm connecting myself to a group of people, the tribal nation that makes up the Penobscot people. It's Kichinuiapid. And I'm connecting myself to a piece of land, and I'm connecting myself to a body of water at the Penobscot River. And so all of those things contained in one word, Penobscot, help me to remember who I am and what I'm connected to. That there's no separation between me and that land and that water and those people. That we're all intertwined, and that one word that defines us contains the primary teaching about who we are on this land. Who we are in relation to each other. Who we are in relation to all of the elements of creation. And so when I come to this work, I don't come to this work from just one aspect. I don't come to this work as just an attorney. I don't come to this work as just a mother who's concerned about the welfare of, you know, my children and future grandchildren. I don't come to this as somebody who's concerned only about food scarcity and the loss of our water, which is the greatest threat right now to our survival. You know, our lands are being hydrofracked right now for shale gas exploration. The region where I come is a series of tribes from the Wabanaki Confederacy. Most people hear about the Iroquois Confederacy because they made it into the history books, right? It's kind of like the Navajo and the other big tribes, the Sioux. And so the Wabanaki Confederation of Tribes is east, where the people of the Dawnland, the Wahabanaki, right? We're the people of the first light. And so our tribes are in Maine and the Canadian Maritimes. And more than 2/3 of the land base within that region has been leased to shale gas companies for shale gas exploration. Right now, my tribe is dealing with a preemptive strike against our rights to the water because they want to bring a pipeline down through that's going to come across the Penobscot River. And so prior to them coming in to bring that pipeline across, they're already challenging. The Attorney General in the state of Maine has released a statement that says that we only own to the bank of the water. We are Penobscot. The river is Penobscot. You know, the land is Penobscot. There's no separation between us and that water. And so when we start thinking about our connections to this work, there's no separation between who I am, what I do, and where I come from, and where I'm going in the future, and the future generations that I'm fighting for, right? Because they're also Penobscot. I breathe the same air and drink the same water that my ancestors breathed and drank hundreds of years ago. My future generations are going to breathe that same air. So I have an obligation. You know, I don't just have a right, I have a responsibility and an obligation to take care of that. And so, as I'm ending here, I want to tell a quick story that is very meaningful to me. I have been a part of this elders group for probably about 18 years now, and one of the elders that I had the benefit of knowing, the privilege, the honor of knowing, is a gentleman named Thomas Binyaka. And I remember one time after a whole day of gathering and talking, and we were all sitting around the fire, and somebody asked him about the Rainbow Warrior prophecy. And I was fairly young at the time. I'd never heard that before because I'm from the East and he's Hopi from the West. And so he talked about this time, and he's gone on now. He's on the other side helping us. And so he told this story about a time of great crisis, that we weren't quite there yet, but that we were getting there. And that when that time arrived, there would be people from every corner of the world, from every race of people that would rise up united, and they would come together. And for all of the sacred directions, there's a different color. You know, there's a different color for each of the directions depending on your tribal traditions and cultural practices. You know, we have our own colors for the directions. Each tribe has their own color for the directions, and then you have the space above, the space below, and the space within you. All of those different spaces, all of those 7 directions have a different color associated with them, as do all of the different races of people. And in recognition of all of those groups from all corners of the world coming together, representing all of those different colors, those people that were going to come together to help avert a crisis in the 11th hour were called the Rainbow Warriors. And so when I sit in a room like this with people from all different backgrounds and coming from all different corners of the world, you know, from different races of people, I know that I'm standing in the presence of those very people that I heard Thomas Binyaka tell me about sitting around that fire that day. And it's a blessing and a curse to be alive during this time. We have the capacity to be able to shape the future, to move ourselves away from a path of destruction toward one of survival. And so it's very difficult work, but I'm honored to stand here with you, you know, and to know that I don't do this work alone, that I do this work with every one of you, you know, and we have to have that mindset of rising up, and that's what this is about. That's what this convergence spoke to me in relation to that prophecy. when Jill and I first talked about it, that convergence is the manifestation of the Rainbow Warrior Prophecy. You know, and that's why we're all here. So I'm honored to be here with you, and I'd like to thank Jill, and I thank all of you for coming. So I'm gonna hand the mic over because we have wonderful speakers. Thank you. Jill Owen.
Thank you, Sherry. I get goosebumps every time I hear that story. So I want to introduce Mike Crenshaw, who is a cultural worker. He is one of the leaders in the Hip Hop Congress. I think he's chair of the political committee, I believe. Political director. He's with Global Fam, and he'll tell us who that is. And he's the lead U.S. organizer for the African Hip Hop Caravan, and also with Housing is for Everyone. So he is the spirit of convergence, working on all these issues that are also connected to each other. So I'm going to pass the mic over and have Mike bring the spirit of convergence into the room.
Thank you, it's good to be here. I want to share some spoken word with you, and I'll say ahead of time that some of it is going to be quick, so it might be difficult.
Can you please stand up?
To translate, yes. But what I want to do, because it's not as much about me talking at y'all, I want to do some call and response, and we'll use that to pull everybody in, and that'll be the slow part, all right? Okay. So when I say revolution is, I want you to say right here, okay? Revolution is right here. People's power is right here. Liberation is right here. Every city, every hood, every block, everywhere. Right here. Okay, so we're going to do it in 2 parts. Y'all are good. This is exciting. Now, the second part is, I want to say, when I say every city, every hood, every block, I want you to say everywhere. Every city, every hood, every block, everywhere. Every city, every hood, every block, everywhere. Every city, every hood, every block, everywhere. I've been in gangs and done hardcore drugs. There ain't nothing as dangerous as being in love. My love for freedom transcends addiction and completely consumes my whole existence. My love of freedom transcends addiction, and it completely consumes my whole existence. And in the face of death, it has kept me living, and it places me in certain positions where I'm exposed and feel only friction. And my heroes that live do so from prisons, while I'm in the streets and trenches leading resistance. Despite all fear, I'm gonna be persistent, because it's clear that what I need to witness is a culmination of our dreams and visions, motivated by the co-creation of something different, where our needs are met, and we're not at war, and we're not in debt, or hungry or poor. I want to be efficient and self-sufficient, so I'm going to ask the elders with a wealth of wisdom. They said you can't avoid it, try to enjoy it. The contradictions, they will destroy us, like this profit-driven unemployment. You know, the jobless millions, they won't be voiceless as fools. Take advantage and try to rape the planet, and then take for granted all the waste and damage while they privatize. All the waves in the ocean due to rising tides. Civilization is broken. Now the crisis lies in the ways we have chosen when the prices rise and our wages are frozen. Currently, it's all a state of emergency. Hurry, we urgently need more currency. I spit succinctly for a sick society, descriptive thinking of a deep variety. Class war. That's all we class for. The police task forces in the streets with masks on. They won't take the mask off or drop the shotgun or hesitate to pepper spray your kids in the hot sun. Racist inequity provides for your basic necessities, denied your shelter, electricity, and human rights despite color or ethnicity. That's what we fight for. I dangle my feet over the edge of the apocalypse. I'm thinking of taking a leap, whatever the consequence. Nothing to lose but blood and consciousness. The path that I choose is a proof that I exist. Critical mass, physical confidence will fill the people with my back on every continent. Study the past. Subvert the dominant, deconstruct, analyze, reorganize the metropolis. Revolution is right here. People power. power is right here. Liberation is right here. Every city, every hood, every block, everywhere. Every city, every hood, every block, everywhere. Every city, every hood, every block, everywhere.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. That was awesome. I mean, thank you. This is Chris. Sorry, that's Mike. I want to introduce Dek Abdi, who is here from Philadelphia. No, Minneapolis. And Sherry, by the way, is from Maine. And Mike is from Portland, Oregon. And Dek and Richard is from Chicago, of course, and Dek is Minneapolis, and he's a student, an activist, a youth worker, a poet, a part-time Chipotle employee, and he is an organizer for the Poor People's Economic Human Rights Campaign, an awesome group leading the way. And he's been at this since 2008, and it's amazing to see this generation of young leaders coming up. So tell it to us, Dek.
How's everybody doing tonight? Yeah, thank you guys for showing up. Like she said, Jill said, my name is Dek Abdi, and I'm from Minneapolis, Minnesota. And I am part of the Poor People's Economic Human Rights Campaign. How many people have heard of that before? Yeah, there you go. Raise the roof for that one, right? Well, the Poor People's Economic Human Rights Campaign is based in Philadelphia right now, and after this conference today, I feel more enlightened to go back to Minneapolis and start a one-man army to push for the movement to start there again. So I'm really excited for that. The Poor People's Economic Human Rights Campaign fights for human rights, fights homelessness, and basically fights for all the rights that were declared in the Declaration of Human Rights, written in 1947, right? Wrong? Signed in 1947, there we go. But the reason that I came here to this conference is because Sherry Honkala invited me, and I was really excited to get out of town. I was like, it's cold, let me go somewhere else, but then I ended up in Chicago. So I'm used to it, it's not that bad, but I think the importance of this conference to me is that all movements are united, whether it's indigenous, whether it's poor people, whether it's environmentalists, because we're all fighting against the same big machine, which is corporations and capitalism, and the people that are destroying our planet slowly but surely. So basically all I want to say is to all my young people out there, it's our turn. You know, all these people are out here and are leading the way for us. You know, Jill is doing her thing, Sherry's doing her thing, Mike's doing her thing, his thing. And, you know, they've done their work. And they're still doing it, but I think, you know, we need some young leaders to come up and take the load of the work. Because in 20 years, it's going to be us sitting in these chairs and moving these movements forward. So I just want to say, do your part, and was it May Day? Earth Day to May Day. Earth Day to May Day. You know, work to make the planet a better place, make Chicago a better place, Minneapolis a better place, and the United States and the world a better place. Thank you.
So I'm going to introduce Tim DeChristopher, fresh out of jail, bitter 70, and you know, who's really kicked off the real climate movement, not that other one that's Obama, we got your back, that movement, you know. This one's the real climate justice movement, and he'll tell you about it, but you know, we're making that connection between climate justice and justice. It's not just an environmental movement, it's a justice movement.
That's right.
Thank you. Take it away, Tim.
So as Jill said, I'm a climate activist, and part of what that means is that I have come out of a failed movement, a movement that set out a while ago to stop climate change. And we heard a lot of language about that for a long time, stopping climate change. And that goal has now pretty clearly failed. It's pretty clear by all accounts that it's too late to stop climate change. It's too late to prevent pretty significant and catastrophic impacts of climate change. And that means that our challenge as a movement now is shifting pretty dramatically. And part of what the failure to meet that old goal means is that it means that it's no longer possible to maintain the status quo. It means that we are committed to a path of rapid and intense change. And there's a lot of scary things about that. There's a lot of suffering and hardship that'll inevitably detail. But it brings me a lot of hope to be in a room like this, full of people that can point out all the ways in which it's a good thing that the status quo is not going to continue for much longer. And all the people who, as we know that things are going to get shaken up, the people who have a lot of ideas about the kind of change that we want to create, and the ways in which we can create a world which is more in line with our shared values. And we're moving towards this period of intense change, knowing that this is an opportunity to push forward our vision of a truly healthy and just world. It's an opportunity to learn from our previous mistakes and say, maybe greed and competition weren't the best values to be organizing our society around. Maybe we can do a little better. And over these past couple days, we've expressed a lot of what that means to do better, of how we can collectively recognize the inherent worth and dignity of every person across a wide range of diversity, of how we can respect every person's right to feed themselves and house themselves and find dignified work. And those kind of visions are what bring us together. And we now move into a period of unprecedented opportunity to realize those visions, because the status quo is impossible to continue. But nothing is inevitable about that. The people in this room are certainly not the only folks who have ideas about how they want to change the world. Corporations also have ideas about how they want to change the world. And the current power structure has plenty of ideas about the desperate things to do to maintain their power and to continue that control, and ways to pit us against one another, and in ways to divide. And we can look throughout our history at how those in power have tried to divide us against one another and separate us into certain spheres and make us believe that other groups down at the bottom are somehow our enemies, rather than that concentrated source of wealth and power up at the top. And that's where things can get really ugly. Looking at our future, that potential for us to turn against one another and to think that some other group down at the bottom fighting for scraps at the table is somehow our enemy, that's where things can get ugly for our future. And it's why it's so vital that we come together at things like this right now and commit that is not going to happen. We can come together at convergences and with a convergence of all of our social justice movements, and make a firm commitment that whatever struggles and hardships lie ahead in our future, we are going to meet those struggles and hardships by turning towards one another and committing to building a better world in the ashes of this one. A world that we have always known was possible, and a world that is now on the verge of inevitability right in front of us. We are at that critical moment in history right now where we know that the status quo is impossible, but we don't know which future lies ahead of us. And that's up to us to shape that. And it's up to us to learn from the mistakes of the past in how to create that vision of a healthy and just world. And out of the climate movement, there's a lot of reasons why we failed to meet that initial goal of stopping climate change. But a big part of that, a big reason why we failed in that challenge, was that we approached it as if climate change was an environmental issue, that it was just in this one little sphere, and that one isolated movement could tackle that problem. And that has proven to be very wrong. And I still haven't really figured out why climate change became an environmental issue, why we looked at the potential for massive dislocation of poor people, and why we said that that's an environmental issue, why we looked at an increased hardship for people to be able to feed themselves and a restriction on the world food supply, and we said that that's an environmental issue. There's a lot of other social justice organizations that have a lot to offer in these challenges that we have too long disregarded. And the understanding that it's going to take in meeting this new challenge of building a better world in the ashes of this one, that's going to take a much deeper analysis than an isolated social movement approaching it as one certain type of an issue. It's going to take an understanding that the fight against injustice is one unified fight, and that we can't fight one piece of oppression without fighting all oppression in all of its manifestations. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Tim. You can see where my mind is, all right. We're all converging, we're becoming sort of the same personality, in my mind at least. Okay, so I want to bring up Margaret Flowers, who also needs no introduction like everybody else speaking here. And Margaret has, done all kinds of wonderful things. Like myself, Margaret is a medical doctor in recovery and in protest, working to change the healthcare system, working to create a healthy economy. It's Our Economy is one of the wonderful organizations that Margaret, together with Kevin Zeese, have been putting together just an incredible set of resources for the public interest, and especially popular resistance. And if you don't know about popular resistance, you want to know about them, just go to that website, because it's a wonderful chronicle of the movement for democracy and justice that really is sweeping the planet. It is us, so find out about it at Popular Resistance and be further empowered. So let me turn it over to Margaret to say a few words.
Thank you. So it was a surprise that I got asked to speak, so I'll try to come up with something intelligent to say. It's great to be in Chicago, because Chicago is the National Office of Physicians for a National Health Program, an organization that I've been very involved in. And it was the healthcare struggle that brought me to the place that I am right now, because healthcare faces the same obstacles that every other issue faces, this corporate control of our political process, and we saw that illustrated very clearly during the health reform process in Washington, D.C. And so it was that journey of understanding that all of our struggles are connected in this way, and that none of us are going to change what's happening if we operate in our silos, but that history tells us that if we come together and if we work together, if we work strategically, that people power is much stronger than the power that we face. But as the others have said, we have to be intelligent about it. We have to educate ourselves about how that political change occurs, about the mistakes or the obstacles that we need to overcome. And we can do that. And recently, my partner Kevin Zeese and I wrote a series of articles. We wrote one for the end of the year that looked at something called the Movement Action Plan. It's the 8 stages of a successful social movement, and it was written by Bill Moyer, who is not the Bill Moyer's Journal. He's not the Bill Moyer of the Backbone Campaign. He's an activist who worked in the Southern Christian Leadership Conference in the Poor People's Campaign and a number of other movements, nuclear movement, and he wrote about this kind of movement theory and 8 stages, and we're in stage 6, and stage 7 is success. But stage 6, yeah, pretty exciting, right? The thing about stage 6, though, stage 8 is defending your success and moving on to the next struggle, because this never ends. Where once you win something, you have to you have to maintain it. The task, stage 6 can last. Nobody can say how long stage 6 lasts, but what we do know is what the tasks of that phase are. And it's education, it's the deep political education. We can't make those mistakes again. During the health reform process, it was so upsetting to me to watch people that I know care about healthcare, that did want universal healthcare, sell out that agenda to a political party. They were told that single payer was off the table, and they accepted that. We can't accept that. It's a political system, is a corrupt system, and whatever is on the table is corrupt. So it's up to us to determine what's on that table. So it's that deep political education. It's also forming connections through our different movements, seeing that we're all part of one larger movement is really important. And the other piece is building alternatives. And that's the exciting piece, is that there's so much happening as I travel around the country and talk to people around the country. There are communities that are taking action. We can't wait for anybody at the top to take the action for us. We have to understand that we're the ones that are going to take this action. So in our communities, people are finding ways to feed themselves, to grow food, to make organic food, healthy food available to those who don't have access to it. They're finding ways to build economic systems that are democratic, that actually can meet the needs of the people in their community, build up their local economies. People are creating community land trusts to make housing permanently affordable. People are taking these actions, and these things are happening around the world. People are doing energy. There's an initiative in Boulder that just succeeded in taking on Xcel Energy and municipalizing it and moving it towards renewables, and they've created the tools to do that, and now they're ready to share them with any community that invites them in to do that. So they've modeled all this stuff. They can tell you what you should use in terms of renewables. They can tell you what it's going to cost and how you're going to handle different things that you need to handle to meet the energy needs of your community. So this is what's exciting, is that all of these solutions are out there, and so we have to be aware of them, and we have to share and educate each other and work together to make them happen, and that's what Popular Resistance is about. It's a daily movement and news and resource website that shows that there's a lot going on, that shows you who's doing really strong work, that's confronting the power system and not just maintaining the status quo, because we have to be serious about where we put our time and energy, and it shares information about the alternatives that are being built. So I'm really excited to be here as part of this convergence and to see you, and about this moment that we live in, because this conversation that we're having here right now is happening all over the country and all over the world, and it's the conversation that needs to be happening right now. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Margaret. I want to introduce Chris Williams, who's the author of Ecology and Socialism, which is over there on the tables, a great book. Check it out. And Chris is a teacher and a scientist and an activist, and one of the founders of System Change, Not Climate Change, which is one of those signs that convergence is happening. We are coming together, and system change, not climate change, is part of what convergence is growing out of. And it represents how social justice and sort of the critique of the capitalist system, the disaster that it is coming together with the climate justice movement. So very exciting movement, and it's great to have Chris here tonight and as a part of the Convergence. So.
Thanks very much. Thanks very much, Jill. I'm really pleased to be here and see so many people here. I do think that we're in a new political moment at the time, and at the moment which is expressed partly by the ability to create a coalition like System Change, Not Climate Change, and I see a new chapter might be forming in Chicago tonight, which is exciting. And just the idea that obviously whatever we've been doing up to this point has not really worked, right? So we've got to think about how do we move forward from some of the movements that we've been inspired by in the past, either in the distant past or in the more recent past. When we think about reappropriating May Day, which was by the immigrant rights movement in 2006, for example, or the struggles that began with Occupy, or before that Wisconsin and the Arab Spring, and the kind of things that inspire us from I Will No More in Canada and indigenous rights struggles, all of these things are clearly coming together in a new kind of political moment, and we do live in very contradictory times, right? And there is a lot of horror around. As Sherry was saying, I think the contrast between hope and horror for where we live was also something that Rachel Carson struggled with when she was thinking about how do I move forward with saying something about the situation the world is in. For me, in the late 50s, early 60s, and I was going to quote from something that she wrote in a letter to a friend of hers about trying to think about what the situation was back then. So she writes in this letter, I suppose my thinking began to be affected soon after atomic science was firmly established. Some of the thoughts that came were so unattractive to me that I rejected them completely. For the old ideas die hard, especially when they are emotionally and intellectually dear to one. It was pleasant to believe, for example, that much of nature was forever beyond the tampering of man. He might level the forests and dam the streams, but the clouds and the rain and the wind were God's. It was comforting to suppose that the stream of life would flow on through time in whatever course that God had appointed for it, without interference by one of the drops of the stream, man. And to suppose that however the physical environment might mold life, that life could never assume the power to change drastically or even destroy the physical world. And what she was grappling with then, obviously, was the first set of atomic tests and the way in which the world changed in 1945. For the first time, people could see the world ending. And there's all this debate at the moment in scientific circles about have we entered a new epoch, a geological epoch? Have we gone from the Holocene to the Anthropocene, right, the age of man? And how would you date that? Where would you start it? Because you've got to be talking about an effect that lasts for tens of thousands of years. The only way, the date that they came up with, guess. 1945, exactly. Because we changed the atmospheric composition of the entire globe. The air is now more irradiated and will be for tens of thousands of years post 1945. So that would be a marker, right? So the most lasting achievement of humanity could be that we irradiated the atmosphere. And so, when you think about that in the current context of climate change and the kind of existential threat that poses to human civilization and much of the rest of the biosphere, I think we're in a similar situation in many ways. And we have to think about ways of getting out of it. In the same way that she then wrote A Silent Spring, which helped launch the modern environmental movement and was very much connected to the question of social justice, as people have been speaking to. Because to give one statistic from today, the 2010 census said, there are 3.5 million homeless people in the United States currently, in 2010. Now, when you think about that, there's actually a worse statistic than that. How could it be worse, right? 3.5 million homeless people in the United States, the richest country by far the world has ever seen. A worse statistic than that is actually that there are, according to the same census, there are 18 million empty houses in the United States. In other words, every homeless person in the United States could have 5 houses, right? The same as John McCain. Not that he can remember how many he has. So I think, you know, we're all getting a lesson in the way the system operates. In the same way that 300,000 people in West Virginia are getting a lesson right now in terms of how capitalism operates. Because not only did they have all of their mountains blown away, right, but now they've been robbed of water, the lifeblood of everything. And the company just declared bankruptcy. Freedom Incorporated was the name of the company. So I think that there is a way in which we can now speak to lots of people about the convergence between climate justice and social justice questions, and make sure that we are speaking for, as people said, everybody. And it's a question of, as Tim was saying, completely changing our values, because under this system, it's all about competition and how much can you acquire at the expense of somebody else, right? But what we need to be thinking about is how do we value human relationships and relationships to the planet and nature, and see relationships as the key thing that we're trying to build and strengthen, as opposed to how much things can we buy and accumulate from the earth, because everything ultimately comes from the earth in the first place. And I think what we really need to be talking about, as we are doing, and as we will have a discussion about, how do we build a movement that's strong enough to take on the entire system, right? Because at some point, we've got to be talking about not just building demonstrations and picket lines and marches and so on and so forth. We've actually got to take on the whole system and get rid of it and replace it with something that we can cooperatively decide is better. And I think we all have a lot better ideas about the way in which we could organize things. We can start by dishing out the homes, right? We don't even have to build any new homes. But there are millions and millions of jobs that we do need doing. When you think about energy, when you think about sanitation, when you think about public transit, we don't need cars. The idea of private property and land, insane. How do we move towards a completely different way of thinking about things and have a revolution, right? In every sense of that word. I think that's something that's worth fighting for. Thanks.
So, I'm Jill Stein, by the way. What can I say? I fight political battles. I got hooked on that. 12 years ago, I got asked to run for office, having no idea what it meant. And my worst fear was that I would have to do a debate. And I actually, you know, we kept saying, you've got to let us into the debate, you've got to let us into the debate. This was running for governor of Massachusetts. And lo and behold, we got into the debate. It was like my worst fear came true. They called our bluff, you know, I couldn't back out at that point. And inside the studio, this was a televised debate with Mitt Romney and other, you know, luminaries. And the only human being in the room was the cameraman, of course. So I was talking right to the camera person. And I was totally the odd man out, you know. I wasn't even worth rebutting, because talking about a green energy and a green economy and healthcare as a human right and living wages, you know, this was just like ridiculous, not even worth engaging in the debate. And, you know, so we walked out of the debate hall after an hour out of the studio, and for the first and last time I was mobbed by the press, who told me I actually won the debate on the instant online viewer poll. Which to me was a life-changing, game-changing realization. People agree with us. What we are saying around the kitchen table is what the American people need and what the American people want, and it's what we're going to get. last time they ever ran an instant online viewer poll in a debate. Hasn't happened since. They do their best to keep us out of the debates, and they don't take real meaningful, polls about debates and so on. So at any rate, to me that was like, I went from total and utter desperation, which is why I ran for office. Nothing else was working, why not try that? And I entered that out of desperation and came out of that campaign with inspiration, realizing that we actually have won in the court of public opinion. People want jobs, they want living wages, they want health care, they want a planet that will be here, not only for our children, but for ourselves, and we're even losing that prospect right now. So it was a very empowering moment to realize that we do have the power, and in Alice Walker's words, the biggest way people give up power is by not knowing we have it to start with. And that's the name of their game, is trying to convince us that we don't have power. The minute we reject that propaganda, we can assert the power that we have. And that is the purpose of this convergence. It's to bring us together, it's to synchronize our watches, because there is so much going on right now. A spirit of democracy and justice really is sweeping the planet. Democracy, revolutions, Occupy protests, austerity, uprisings, the Chicago teachers strike. Eviction blockades, the shutdown of coal plants here in Chicago. The Idle No More campaign going on in Canada. The fights against tar sands, the fight against fracking, the fight against nuclear power, the fight against GMOs, and we actually stopped a war. Just a few months ago, we stopped a war. A war that we were told was inevitable, resistance was futile. We showed them what was futile. What's futile is opposing, the will and the strength and the vision and the conviction of everyday people who stand up for what we need, what we want, and what we deserve. And that is the spirit that we are harnessing in Convergence. We are 1,000 movements taking place across the planet. If only we can synchronize those movements and get out on the same day, it would bring the whole machine to a grinding halt. We actually considered, well, maybe that's what we should just start doing right now and declare the global strike. And we sort of, after vetting that a little bit, we realized we probably don't want to start with that. So, we thought Earth Day to May Day, 10 days, it's the continuum of justice between Earth Day and climate justice, and we need to take Earth Day back anyhow from the corporations who stole it. And make it not only about the planet, but also about the people and about peace. And about ending this profit-driven system. Because we're not going to solve any of these problems unless we solve all of these problems. We are the 99%, they are 1%. Last I heard, that was about 99 times more powerful than them. If democracy has anything to do with it. And unfortunately, in this country, we are in a crisis of democracy, as well as a crisis of the economy and ecology and peace. They are all under assault, they're under global assault, which is a terrible thing, but the silver lining is that that does line us up for, an unbelievable collaboration like they have never seen the likes of. So that is what this organizing that we hope to launch tonight here in Chicago, let it begin here, this organizing for Convergence for 10 days to change course from Earth Day to May Day this spring. Let's
work together to create an Earth Day celebration, which is relevant to what's going on here in Chicago, which is about living wages and the fight for 15, as well as the fight for a livable planet. That all belongs in Earth Day. And likewise, for May Day, and I want to acknowledge and thank Richard and Workers United for helping to lead the way on a Convergent May Day, which is not only about workers' rights and the fight for 15, and immigrant rights as human rights, which is what they are. These are human rights. The right to flee economies that have been destroyed by these so-called free trade agreements. NAFTA is why we had a large surge of people seeking economic survival, basically. That's what immigration is about. So let's fix that problem by fixing the abuses that are wrecking the economies in this country and wrecking the economies in the third world. They are all being wrecked by the creation of this multinational corporate government that has no accountability, which is why we must also stop the TPP, the Trans-Pacific Partnership, for which the Obama administration has been leading the charge. This is NAFTA on steroids. It must be stopped. And we will bring that also into Earth Day to May Day, because all the work in the world for protecting our environment or protecting workers' rights or creating a healthcare system where we can rein in the abuses of pharmaceutical companies, or reining in the banks and creating public banks instead of these rip-off too big to fail banks. All of those regulations, all of those protections are very much at risk if the TPP goes through. So all of this comes together on that spectrum of Earth Day to May Day, and we're looking at, under Rich's leadership, really, the development of a May Day vision that we can share across the country. We need a Convergent May Day for workers' rights, immigrant rights, and climate justice. Let's bring them together and let's have a bigger May Day, than we've ever seen before. Because let's get all the climate justice people out for May Day. They rely on our being divided and therefore conquered. And the minute we start to come together, we have defied that paradigm that has kept us, in the terrible situation that we're in. So we can change that and assert the power of our vision, the power of the solutions that we're putting forward. As Chris was mentioning, this is not rocket science. We know how to fix this. For example, we can put everyone to work right now in a living wage job that not only ends the economic crisis, but which also greens the economy. We can create not only a New Deal, but a Green New Deal that creates that emergency transition right now to a green economy, which, by the way, not only puts a halt to climate change, but which also creates a real healthy community. This is not only about economic and climate health, this is about human health, because when you get rid of the pollution and you get rid of this horrific agricultural industrial food system and you create sustainable local food systems and public transportation with clean fuel that dovetails with walking and biking, and so you don't have to go do an exercise program and go join a health club. We should have communities that allow us recreation as a right, as part of our daily lives. We should have safe streets and safe sidewalks.
And our kids should be able to walk to school safely. And you know, the community violence goes away when people have jobs and food and homes. So in short, this is a win-win. And by the way, those outrageous and immoral wars for oil, they become completely obsolete and unnecessary the minute we have a green economy. So this is a win-win. We can either lose it all, which we're on track to do right now, or we can have it all. How about we have it all? So I'm just going to wrap up by saying, you know, it's time, we have no choice, it's happening, let's make it happen faster, and in enough time that we can avert the crisis and the collapse of our economy, and the collapse, especially of our climate, from which there is no recovery ever. So we can do this in good time. In fact, we know that we can have 100% clean renewable energy by 2030, in time to completely put the climate crisis out of business. We can do that, and it pays for itself in the health savings alone from averting pollution. These are studies coming out of Stanford University recently. So this is a win-win, and it pays for itself. There's absolutely no reason not to do it. We have every reason to rise up right now and demand not only our survival, that we survive, but that we thrive. We can thrive, we can have just and sustainable and healthy communities right now. And what we really want to do tonight is to help launch this effort, Earth Day to May Day, here in Chicago. Lead the way, and we're going to spread the good news about what you're doing in Chicago, what Richard Monet and Workers United are already doing, and we hope that National Nurses United and the Chicago teachers and the Teamsters and everyone else come on board. You know, this is time not to be shy. You know, this is a time to stand up for ourselves, take our future back. Let's make it happen, and let's start it in Chicago. Thank you.
Thank you. There's no doubt that the panel covered a lot of issues, and certainly there's a lot more we can cover. And I'm no expert in, you know, climate change or the environment, although unions have been supporting in a lot of organizations, the Blue-Green Alliance. There's all kinds of organizations where unions have participated in. And certainly what we're trying to do here is not replace those movements. I am not turning over the union to the environmentalists or the global change movement. We have to respect the organizational integrity of the fighters that run their organizations. And I try to build the union in such a way where the membership are active participants in the decision making, and many of them are here so that they know what it is we're doing and can participate. Because they speak another language doesn't mean that they can't understand or contribute to the process. Most of the people here are active organizers around May Day every year, and they internally organize the members in each of their shops to participate in May Day, and we try to maintain that structure by keeping them informed and listening to their concerns. But there's no doubt that one of the things that I would like to say that I think we struggled with it in our conversations here at the Convergence, is we're not accustomed to working together. There's no doubt in my mind, we have ideological differences. I went and spoke at Race and Democracy Conference in Madison. And my wife was gonna speak at a workshop, and it was like 10 minutes before. And she was speaking to her son in Spanish, and somebody raised that, what were they saying? And I said, don't worry, there'll be translation for the workshop, don't worry about it, because it was a personal conversation. And then he confronted me and he says, I want to know what they're saying. And I told him to go take a flying whatever. I was not respectful to him in any measure, in any way. But we have those kinds of confrontations. We're going to have to build alliances with the people in poverty who are voiceless, have no organization, you know, and don't understand. And not only that, but see us as enemies. How do we do that? How do we build those relationships? Very respectfully. And I have tried to build relations with the Hip Hop Congress, with other organizations through our union activity in Ohio and Wisconsin and other areas, to begin to try to break down those walls so that our members understand and begin to interact with other groupings, with other sectors of society that have different needs, different demands. And I think that people should also understand the union movement and the difficulties within that. You know, the struggles that this is an enlightened crowd. I don't need to explain to you what's happened over the last 30 years to the trade union movement, to jobs and all that, to the immigrants, the separation of families and all that's happened to the workforce and the attacks. But one thing I do know, that we have to, in a principled way, break down those borders, break down that lack of understanding, those culture clashes. And certainly, you know, one of the ways to do it is by example. You know, to deal with the struggles of that conversation. And there's a lot of us in a lot of different ways who have experienced those struggles. I grew up in Los Angeles with my family, my grandmother, and her sister lived across the border in Tijuana with her sons and daughters, and we traveled back and forth. And it taught me something that then I took to high school. And when they were disciplining people for speaking Spanish, treating them bad, and I was asked to organize in my high school a strike of the students against the mistreatment of the Spanish speaking and to fight for bilingual education and for bilingual teachers and bilingual administrators. We did precisely that, and we shut down 6 high schools in East Los Angeles. But in the course of the next period of time, it's been a constant fight. I mean, look at it, I'm vice president of a union. Do you think that was easy as a Latino? You know, the challenge was greater. I had to service better than everybody else. I had to get better contracts than everybody else. And we still have that sort of situation. But one thing I have faith in is we're overcoming those things. And not only that, by taking steps and trying to play a small role in developing the unity between labor and the experience of the worker. And I know I go to factories or workplaces in Ohio, southern Indiana, and I hear them talk about environmentalists. And they treat them like they're elitists, they're aliens, they only care about themselves, and they talk bad about them because they don't know you. Somehow or another, we got to bridge that gap. And sometimes environmentalists might not even take the time to explain to a worker who doesn't understand, because it's easier to talk to somebody who already agrees. And talking to white workers is a difficult process. You know, just like talking to the poor in the inner cities. So building these bridges, and more importantly, understanding a strategic direction that we can go in so that we can stop losing, so that we can turn the negativity around that's permeating our communities, permeating our workplaces. Why are we going to go march? Nothing ever happens. Look at how many millions came out in 2006. What happened? Look at how many came out last year. So there's a negativity that grows based upon that experience. And we have to set an example by consciously not just hoping that people will come out on May Day, not just hoping people will come out on Earth Day. We have to put the nuts and bolts together to make sure it happens. Yeah. We cannot suffer small crowds. We cannot suffer this kind of negativity. We got to assure success. If we're going to organize a workplace, We don't build that organization on hope. We do an analysis. Who's for us? Who's against us? Who do we have to win over? Which are the threes? Which are the fours? There's an organizing plan. And if we're going to succeed Earth Day to May Day and start the process this year and hopefully make it much larger, much more impactful next year, then we got to set about organizing to do it. And we got to reach out to communities we haven't reached out before. We got to reach out to organizations. And sometimes you look at people and you say, here's what we got. We tried that already. Well, we got to put that aside and develop the plan to win people over, that now is the time. And I believe now is the time. Thank you.
So we want to open this up now for discussion and comment. Before we do, I want to just give the organizers and the organizations who are here tonight a chance to just quickly say who you are. And we're going to give you just like really a short 20 seconds, okay, to just like say who you are, announce where you are, what you're doing, real quick. And we'll just do like a show of hands, and then we'll just pass this around and let people just quickly say who you are, who's here, so we can start saying, you know, what is really the structure of change here? What does it look like? Who is it in Chicago? And then we'll take questions from there. And I also just want to acknowledge in the room tonight also Rising Tide is here, I think. So thank you, Rising Tide. And the Michigan Coalition Against Tar Sands, which has been doing absolutely heroic work. They have a trial next week. So just quickly, I'm going to walk around with the mic. Do you want to take the mic and just walk around? And yeah,
Would you raise hands if you're an organization here tonight?
I'm with the 8th-day Center for Justice, and we're the faith community of Catholic nuns, priests, and brothers, okay? And we do a lot of work around numerous justice issues.
Yeah, my name's Al, this is Vicky, we're members of MyCats. We work a lot and got an incredible amount of support from people in Chicago. We primarily work against tar sands and bridge pipelines, which run through here through Michigan. We've done a lot of frontline action only because we've been left with no other alternative. But Chicago's been great to us all along. We love you and we thank you, and we look forward to working with you in the future.
Hi, I'm Thomas Frank with Tar Sands Free Midwest. We try to support groups like MyCats. We're trying to bring together all the frontline communities in the Midwest to connect up, especially those that are impacted the most. That's usually poor minority communities. I live in East Chicago, where we have the largest tar sands refinery in the country, perhaps the world, BP, right here on the lakefront. And it's trying to empower those communities ahead of privileged communities on the North Shore, for instance, that are trying to control some of the dialogue when it comes to the environment, and that's what we're trying to do.
Hi, I'm Mark. You heard a couple speakers mention system change, not climate change from up front. There's a bunch of us here representing system change, not climate change. We want to build a chapter here in Chicago that sees the problem of ecological disaster as a systemic problem. So we want to start a chapter here. We got some catching up to do with some people on the East Coast and the West Coast. We want to build a coalition that can challenge and organize, like Richard was talking about. Come see us, we're over at the table.
Hi, my name's Angie, and I'm with Rising Tide Chicago, and we're part of Rising Tide North America. So if you want to get involved with Rising Tide, we have some brochures over there, and we're having a meeting next Sunday. We've been working on the issue of fracking and trying to keep hydraulic fracturing out of Illinois, and we need lots of help. So go see us at that table, sign up, make sure we get your contact information, and we'll let you know about what's going on.
My name is Ivy. I'm with Frack Free Illinois. We're working to maintain our frack free state, and we knew fracking was legalized, so we have a lot of work to do. Another project is averting the proposed sand mine in Stark Rock. We want to protect our state park for everyone to enjoy, and you can find us on Facebook.
My name is Vito, and I'm part of Southern Illinoisans Against Fracturing the Environment, and we are trying to protect Illinois and Southern Illinois from hydraulic fracturing, and especially Shawnee National Forest. And thanks to Rising Tide and other organizations here in Chicago, and we're getting support from all over the country. So thanks.
Hey everyone, I'm Adam Gottlieb. I just joined an organization called the League of Revolutionaries for a New America. We publish a newspaper called Rally Comrades. It's available online. Also associated with a newspaper called the People's Tribune, which is an independent newspaper. Both of these newspapers are focused on connecting the dots, analyzing the big picture of what's going on. And I just took on an assignment for the League of organizing something called the Revolutionary Poets Brigade, which I'm very excited about. I'm a poet, I'm a hip-hop artist, I'm a songwriter. Hip-hop artists, songwriters, poets, wordsmiths of all kinds. We want to organize and create platforms for these messages to get spread in artistic ways, and also to hold dialogue amongst ourselves and to educate ourselves at the same time. So talk to me, come holler at me about that. Also, real quick, I'm with my friend here, Diana Zwinnick. She's an executive director of an organization called Teen Writers and Artists Project. We're based out in the west suburbs, but we do a lot of work with youth mentorship. So if you're an educator, if you want to, if you're involved in the work of creating spaces for young people to speak their voices, we want to connect with you too. So thank you.
Hi everyone, my name is Mario. I'm here representing the ISO, the International Socialist Organization. We're a group of revolutionaries. We're involved in workers' rights and immigrants' rights, in the rights to in environmental rights. So if you're interested in socialist politics, we have plenty of texts. Our newspaper, which covers activism, not only here in Chicago, but across the country, with analysis of an alternative to capitalism. So come check out our table. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Nancy Wade. I'm with the Chicago Green Party. I am a candidate for Congress in the 5th Congressional District. I ran in 2012, the same year that Jill Stein ran as our presidential candidate for the Green Party. At that time, I got nearly 6% of the vote, so I'm doing it again, making it even better. Even if you don't live in the 5th District, you have an opportunity to influence an incumbent who's doing business as usual. He will not stand up against the TPP. In fact, he considered co-sponsoring a fast-track resolution for it. There's a rally February 1st that is going to be marching outside of Mike Quigley's office. I will be there. And you can find information about me at wadeincongress.org. And I hope that you will support me as a Green Party candidate, because we do not take corporate bribes. We take only individual contributions. There has to be a political face to this fight, and the Green Party can be that face.
So this is great hearing about how many people can be really brief, because we actually have to be out of the hall by 9:30, and I know that there's people who want to ask questions and say a few, about and so on about the convergence. So
I'll be brief. Beverly Walter, a number of us here are from CAPAL, Citizens Act to Protect Our Water. We work in a number of, there are a lot of water issues, people. Fracking, tar sands, radiation in the water, Great Lakes, privatization. So if you're interested in protecting the water in the area, we welcome you to join us. Thank you.
Hello everybody, I'm William Jones Jr. I'm a frontliner for Greenpeace Frontline Chicago.
So we do a lot of direct action around global issues as well as local ones. And I'm here to get closer to all of you because it's all about convergence. It's all about being together. It's all about inclusiveness. And also Chicago Nonviolent Activism. You can join it on Meetup. You can join it on Facebook. The whole effort with that is we're all a bunch of activists and sometimes we remain separated. You know, I'm with this group or I'm with that one. And we only really make a difference when we all decide to be together. So check that out as well.
Thank you. My name is Steven Zarlenka. I'm the director of the American Monetary Institute. I'm in Chicago about 10 months of the year. And we worked with the Greens. You may not realize, but the Greens did something historic in 2010 as part of your national platform. And there was a big battle over this, and the National Committee decided, and you put forward a monetary plank which is still in force, which would, one, nationalize the 12 Federal Reserve banks around the country. Really nationalize them, not play games. Take them over. They don't like to talk about nationalize in Washington. They wanted to say incorporate into the U.S. Treasury. Anyway, that was the first step. You guys have put that, you have that as part of your platform. You got to learn more about it. Second part, you have already come forward to stop what's called the fractional reserve system. Now, Jill, the fractional reserve system is at the base of virtually every problem that you people are working on. And the third, I'll finish. I drove through an hour and a half of horrible way. You can't imagine what I've driven through to get here. I even put on a tie for you. Now, the third thing is that you have already supported. You're supporting this. You have to find out about it. I'm happy to help you. The third thing is that the government starts spending, not loaning, not borrowing, but creating and spending money. This is a government power that exists. It has to be used. You have to tell them to use it. Some of them know. We helped Dennis Kucinich introduce these three things. You guys came forward with it first as an idea of a main political party. Nobody done that in 225 years in this country. You did it. Kucinich introduced it into the Congress. H.R. 2990 of the 112th Congress. He introduced it. It did not get much attention. It got sidetracked. That's partly our fault, partly your fault. Thank you for your attention. I've got cards here, and you can look us up on our website. I'm sorry to take so long. And don't worry, you can go back.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Sophie. I'm actually with the Chicago Socialist Campaign. There are a number of us I see here tonight. We are a group of socialists and activists in Chicago who are investigating the possibility of running in an aldermanic election inspired by much of what Jill said, although before she said it, but because we hold the same ideas, and also by Savant's victories and Time War's near victory as well in the electoral arena. It's time to start giving a voice in any scale, modest as it may be, to those who feel disenfranchised, and that's what we're about. We are having a meeting on Wednesday, this coming Wednesday at 6:30 at the Jane Addams Hull House. Every single activist in this room, please come out. This is a really crucial project. Let's see how far we can take it. Thank you.
Can I just point out that Emma here is, she's got a box and we're collecting donations, so if you're in a position where you can make a donation to the Convergence, we would really appreciate it.
Hola, buenas tardes.
Hello, good afternoon.
Yo soy Irma Palmerín.
My name is Irma.
García,
or?
Palmerín.
Irma Palmerín.
Bueno, yo trabajo en una empresa.
Well, I work at a workplace.
Y soy miembro de este sindicato.
And I'm a member of this union.
Del cual estoy muy orgulloso.
Which one, I'm very, very proud.
Y a todas las organizaciones que hoy están aquí, están en buenas manos y les damos la bienvenida a este local.
And again, we want to welcome you guys to this great union. You know, you guys are, you know, we're trying to accommodate you. You know, you guys are in great hands. So we're a good union, and we're here to support you guys.
Y esperamos que todos se sientan a gusto aquí, que estén cómodos y que vamos a trabajar unidos como nuestro vicepresidente lo ha anunciado.
So, and I'm hoping, you know, that, you know, you guys feel very good over here. We're looking forward to working with you guys together, like our Vice President said. We're looking forward to working together and continue fighting.
My name is Maria Garcia, and I welcome all of you. I'm a member of this Workers United, and I come from Wisconsin. And the reason of me being here is because we all have something in common, which it means we have to come along. And it's been a hell of a drive, but I made it here because I know that we all have the same purpose. We need to become together, and we have to start knocking down barriers. My purpose of being here is that I need a future for my kids, for my grandkids, and for so on and on and on. And I welcome all of you, and you're in great hands. And we're fighting for workers' rights, for Green Party's rights, and I emphasize this, if we don't do something about it, we're all extinct. We are the next chapter, being a part of the dinosaurs. So, you're welcome, and I'm here, and I support you in every which way I can. Good night.
So that was great, and that was meant to be short announcements, but we do have a few minutes if anybody else wants to speak. So if there's, yeah.
I have a question. I have a question. Are we at the question and answer?
Yeah.
Okay, so are we doing one, like demonstration on Earth Day and one on May Day? Is that the plan here? One and one, or are we trying to do 10 days of strike? What's the plan here in Chicago?
Great, thank you. And I think what we want to do tonight is we're passing around a sign-up so that we can start this discussion. And we've been talking about the same question, all weekend, and different cities are kind of going forward in different ways. The hope is that we'll at least do Earth Day and May Day as kind of the bookends, and then fill in maybe one spot or maybe two. Some people want to do every day. There are all kinds of ideas on the table. And the idea tonight is let's at least find out who we are. There's a sign-up sheet going around, a couple of them. Are those, Adam, are the sign-up sheets circulating? Okay, great. So yeah, just be sure you sign up and let's figure out what it's going to be. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Mary Bennett, and I would like to suggest another intersectionality, and that is the relationship to women and poverty. And I know intersectionality between women and poverty, and this is something that we realized even before the Shriver Report. Okay, it's been in existence in the form of income gaps between men and women. The number of women who are employed in minimum wage jobs that are not a living wage. So my suggestion, to this panel, and I am on the national board of the National Organization for Women, and we're engaged in that issue. At every board meeting in which we do meet. We are going to have our national conference, and our next two conferences in communities that have a large minority, indigenous population. The conference this year is going to occur in Albuquerque, New Mexico. Members of the board had insisted, because they have felt for years, now represented was strictly limited to white women, and we're trying very hard to include everyone, in this movement. So we saw a long time ago, the connection, between, women, and labor. In fact, that was the impetus, that formed that organization to begin with. So maybe everyone in this movement might want to consider adding Women's Equality Day in August to get women on board in this movement. I cannot see our movement succeeding without including women as part of the conversation. And that's all I got to say.
Just a quick announcement. We have a sign-up sheet here that's going to be passed around the room. If you're interested in getting involved in Earth Day to May Day organising, please sign up. If you're in Chicago, and we're going to be contacting you about having a forthcoming meeting here.
Yeah, and just in the interest of time, because we'll need to be out of here pretty soon, if you can confine your question to like a minute or less, or your comment, just try to make it really short and sweet. We'll take a few questions and then maybe have time for brief responses from the panel. So a minute or less.
Hi, my name is Ketavan. What I really promote is ethical consumerism. So for me, I believe that every time you spend money, you're making a vote. You're making a vote. You're either supporting a company that's going to destroy our environment, that's going to treat its workers like crap, or you're going to support a company that's doing the right thing. There are lots of resources online about ethical consumerism, the Better World Shopping Guide being one of them, but I do want to promote that you vote every day with your dollar and you actually support the companies that we support the way that we are here.
Can I just ask, which part of the room didn't get the sign-up sheet yet? Has everybody seen this? Okay, great.
Good evening. Thank you all for speaking. My name is Savannah Hawkins. I'm a futurist and a change agent, and a futurist studies alternative futures and how to create them. I feel my comment is you didn't allow enough time because you have a golden opportunity here. These people are all fired up and should be put in a circle and get to work, because they're going to go home, they're not going to know what to do with all their energy, and how a lot of them have organizations, but they don't know how to get it going. And they all have great ideas, unique ideas, and you should have allowed, every time I come to one of these things over many years, there's never anybody willing to listen to the people who come, because they've got great ideas and they know how to do it, and they're going to go home and it's going to fall apart. It always falls apart. So my personal idea for an event is a worldwide economic boycott of irresponsibly social companies, because in a few days they would go out of business unless they changed. Thank you.
We only have 10 minutes left, so maybe we'll just do some quick responses to
and I think it's very true that there's a lot of great talent in this room, and we're thrilled with the turnout, and that's why we're trying to sign people up to stay connected and to stay engaged and to continue that conversation. It can't happen all in one night. This is a very long movement and a long revolution, and we're building deep fundamental change and stay engaged. That's why we created this space to connect with all the different organizations that are in the room. It doesn't mean we're going to get it all done tonight, but get in touch with all those people that stood up. Any of those different organizations that speak to you, tap into them and tap into this bigger, larger movement that we're all going to keep pushing long beyond tonight.
We know that everybody's enjoying. In order that we can keep going with this, we need your donations. We really appreciate it. $1, 50 cents, $100, whatever you be able to donate, we would really appreciate it. Sé que todos están disfrutando esta noche y en manera de poder continuar con esto necesitamos que donen para continuar con este movimiento. Si pueden donar 50 centavos, $1, $100, $20, lo que puedan, es bien apreciado. Gracias.
I was born and grew up in Iran, and I raised that because of the issue of the nuclear issue that's going on in the press right now. We have no use for nuclear power in Iran. Absolutely none. If there is a country where you can have solar and wind, it's Iran. We need a movement organized in Iran against nuclear power. That is impossible to do as long as US guns are aimed on Iran. And I want to raise this because there's an international component in terms of what goes on. We have talked about the wars for oil, but there's also this sort of an angle to it. So I think that I just want to raise this in terms of the responsibility of people in the US in terms of getting US imperialism out of the business of other countries so people in those countries can actually organize it for better climate, democracy in their own countries so that we actually can make this a global movement.
Hello everyone, my name is Kat, and in my spare time I'm actually a graphic design student right now, and I also channel my emotions as well as my own personal beliefs through art. And if you ever coined this term artivist in general, an artist is just simply a person who is an activist who actually channels his or her art through these particular movements. And just one quick I actually do believe that art and activism and education all pretty much are a correlation to what we need to deal with in this world right now. And in this environment, through social causes, through environmental causes, for me, this is how I even feel about most people going through this whole situation, right? And thank you very much.
Okay, we're going to do quick wrap-up comments, but I wanted to comment to the gentleman from Iran. I think that it's too bad that my friend Paul is not here. He's been at this conference and participating with us, and he works for an organization called the Nuclear Age Peace Foundation, who's allied with the National Peace Alliance and the National Institute for Peace, or National Peace Academy, and they're working on the issue of nuclear disarmament. But there's a scenario that none of us have considered. So Richard talks about in 2025, there's going to be 50% less jobs. And so what happens to that workforce who's already hungry, who's already struggling to survive? And if we get to, if we don't stop this tar sands and hydrofracking, we're going to run out of water. We have a fixed amount of water on the planet. A lot of people don't realize that because our educational system is lacking. But we have a fixed amount of water on the planet that's able to sustain life. And if we run out of water, none of us survive. It's an end game proposition. So we have to stop hydrofracking and tar sands exploration. So imagine what would happen, though, in a nuclear-armed world if we hit critical mass in the wrong direction. So what if we have 50% of the workforce that can't feed themselves because they can't become employed? What if we are running out of water and there are limited places to access that water on the planet? You know, what if all of this happens and we're a society that is armed with nuclear weapons. You know, when we look at the Cold War, it was fought over nothing in comparison to the survival crisis that we're all facing. And so the importance of the disarmament is really critical to this whole movement, and I just wanted to give that shout out because Paul's not here to do that. But there are so many things we could say to each other that we don't have the opportunity to say, we don't have the time to say. I have to catch a flight at 5 a.m. But I want you to be encouraged, because look around the room. And there are rooms like this in every city all over the country. There are rooms like this in every city all over the world. There are millions and millions and millions of people who are rising up in different ways. And so we all have to be inspired by each other and encouraged by each other. And I'm encouraged by you. And so I want to thank you. You know, Kachiwaliwan, that means I give you my heartfelt thanks. And I wish you guys the very best, and I'm sure that we're going to continue to see each other and work together because we're all family, right? Yeah.
I'm going to be very quick because we got to get out of here. In response to what the woman said about we didn't give folks enough time, I want to give even though I don't know everyone in here, I want to give the people in this room credit because you're here, and I know that you're all committed, or at least a good number of you are committed to working beyond what happens here tonight. So thank you for being here. Every city, every hood, every block, everywhere. Every city, every hood, every block. Everywhere. Every city, every hood, every block. Everywhere. Thank you.
Yeah. I just want to give a shout out to everybody that came up here and introduced themselves. I just want to point out one thing that was very interesting to me, and that brought this whole convergence back into my mind, and that I saw everybody line up and introduce what organization they were from, and I saw a lot of similar things. You know, it's like 3 different socialist organizations, and I think what we need to do is just bring all that under the same umbrella and work together, because we're all fighting the same struggles. So let's do this.
When I heard people talking about the different groups and their different struggles, it reminds me that popularresistance.org is actually your website. It's a website for people that are on the front lines of struggle challenging the system. So if you're doing that, please share what you're doing with us so we can publish it and share it with other people. Use our calendar to post your events. We're starting an arts page where you can upload your art. So please make that your website. Thanks. Oh, and our first campaign is Flush the TPP. So come to that too, flushthetpp.org, because we're winning so far.
Yeah, very briefly, James Hansen has just released a paper, The Climate Scientist, saying that what we're on track for in the very near future is not just an ice-free world, but a potentially human-free world. And those are the kind of stakes that we're playing for, or fighting against, I should say. I mean, I am very hopeful for the future, despite all of the scientific reports that I read every day. And I think on the basis that we're re-establishing something that has been lost over the last 30 years of this kind of drive for individual self-gratification through commodities. And that's a sense of basic solidarity. Solidarity in a meaningful sense that we are on the picket lines and demonstrations and marches for each other, because it's the solidarity of the 99%, which is the oppressed and exploited of the world, not just in this country, but all over the world. And so that's what it makes it so powerful, that we're linking all these struggles that they constantly try to divide us on, whether it's race, class, gender, or sexuality. And so to rebuild what has existed in the past, because if there's one thing that runs through every single human culture that you can think of since we became a species, it is a resistance to tyranny and oppression. And all of the battles that we've won in the past, we can win again. The stakes are very high, but I think we have the impetus and the momentum to start building a better future. So let's get to it. Thanks.
So for those who would like to continue this conversation, at least some of us are going over to the Park Tavern on Ashland, out the front door and to the right, just a couple doors down. So come on down, and again, thank you so much all for coming out. Thank you to Workers United. People, planet, peace, over profit, Earth Day, May Day, this spring,
Let's make it happen. Thank you.
So you know Angie, you're part of Rising Tide? What's that? Are you part of Rising Tide? Yeah,